righty, what do we got going on here? Oh, yep. Another fun day. Hey, everybody, welcome back to The Varied Life. I'm Steve, the retired hobby tech guy who is an American expat in Korea. Yeah, that's what we got going on. Sold everything in the United States: house, car, guns, ammo, lots of ammo, all of that stuff. And eventually, even everything in the kitchen junk drawer. We took a couple of suitcases and we came and retired in Korea. So it's been really interesting. With that, Korea is not known as being a retirement friendly expat destination like the Philippines or Thailand or Bali or, even countries like Portugal or things like that. But because of my wife's Korean ancestry, she was born and raised in Korea. We found out after she became an American citizen, long after, we found that her citizenship, or rather her ancestry, would allow us to get visas to retire in Korea, and so we did. And with that, as I've mentioned on some previous videos, it's really interesting when you retire in another country because it's different. Mr. Captain Obvious, thank you. Yes, thank you for letting us know that. But yeah, there's some differences, and despite all of the problems that we have in the United States, which I keep abreast of, I send emails and messages and correspondence to elected officials and so on and so forth, because I still believe in our rights as American citizens. Living in another country, you get to see stuff that's going on that you didn't think you'd ever see. And that's what we're seeing here today. Another impeachment here in Korea. So if you've been living under a rock, it's been really kind of interesting because way back, it ends up that, let me see if I get that. Is that good? That works? That'll work. It ends up that North Korea, or not North Korea, but South Korea, the President Yoon, declared martial law, and it was for about 6 hours. Everybody was up in arms about it, literally. And then it got voted down. And then it was just like, I don't know why he did that, but it ends up he declared martial law because he said that the opposition party, kind of a two-party system like we have, Democrats and Republicans. They have two parties, right and the left, up or down or whatever you want to say. And because of the political infighting, he declared martial law, and which was probably not the good thing to do in hindsight. But even in foresight of looking at it and mulling it over, there's never been a time in Korea where declaring martial law was a good thing and ended up with good results. And the same thing kind of happened here. So eventually, President Yoon got impeached. He still needs to be voted on for impeachment. So in other words, all of the politicians, the elected officials, voted for impeachment. They ended up getting the numbers that they needed for him to be impeached. That doesn't mean he's impeached. It just means that now it can go to the next step, which is going before kind of like their Supreme Court, and they will, now the case will be heard, and whether he gets impeached and punished, all of that still remains to be seen. Now, so who's president? Well, it ends up being a prime minister, and it's interesting because he has been delaying that impeachment process, some about their elected Supreme Court official kind of like things, and it ends up that, so now the prime minister, who is the acting president of Korea, he's going to be impeached. First time in history of Korea as a country. So it seems like, the political infighting is pretty bad, and it's going to get really interesting to see who's going to run the country. With that being said, I think declaring martial law was the straw that will break the camel's back on so many fronts when it comes to Korea's economy. Unfortunately, I talked about this before, had a bunch of articles, and even without the articles, it would take a hit on businesses, international trade. Countries wanting to do business with Korea or thinking about doing business are going to reel back and say, let's kind of wait and see what happens, because this, when you say martial law, that describes an instability that just echoes throughout the world. And so I mentioned that that would happen, and tourism has already taken a hit. Matter of fact, I saw some articles talking about how tourism has taken a hit because of this whole the last straw, declaring martial law in business and finance and real estate, and talking about the exchange rate, and that has kind of, that's been kind of rough too, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, another impeachment and some really interesting things. Um, with that, let's go ahead and take a look at what's going on. So here it is. We're going to take a look at what's going on in South Korean politics now. Yes, it is very interesting. And South Korea's parliament voted Friday to impeach acting president and prime minister Han Duck-seo, who has been fulfilling the role of President Yoon since he was impeached on the 14th. Remember, it still needs to go through the process on whether he actually gets punished or whatever. Latest development in an unprecedented political crisis that has unfolded in South Korea, blah, blah, blah. South Korean politics have been chaotic since Yoon has declared martial law. It was only reversed by the opposition by 6 hours later. Again, I'm not sure why he wanted to do that. There were some considerations or conspiracy theories saying that because of the German stock manipulation of the president's wife was involved in, and some other stuff that he's involved in, that he didn't want any further investigation, so he took a bullet for his wife, decided to declare martial law, and that would take the spotlight off of his wife and all of those things and just put it on him as being impeached. And I think he was hoping, or is hoping, that he will go before their Supreme Court and it'll be like, oh, shame on you, here's a fine, whatever. And yeah, it'll be a done deal, and the corruption will be overlooked. That remains to be seen. It could sounds pretty good to me. Anyway, Yoon's fate depends on how the Constitutional Court, which on Friday held its first hearing of the presidential impeachment trial. So I've already had people ask me prior to this, asking, well, he's impeached, so who's next? He's not impeached yet. It's just that they had the votes for him to be impeached and to start their process. So again, there's a process of checks and balances. It's just not, everyone votes and he's impeached and that's it. It's a done deal. There's a system of checks and balances here in Korea, kind of like the United States, that you can appeal and charges, and, you got to bring evidence and all this stuff. So this is going to be a long, drawn out process. Probably longer than the Johnny Somali thing, which his court case has been moved from December to 7 March, and he's facing a litany of charges and for just being a waste of space. But I digress. Friday's impeachment of acting President Han stems from a standoff between him and the main opposition party over 3 vacuums at this very court. So I think it ends up that they have 9 Supreme Court justices. 3 of the seats are empty, and he said he would not appoint 3 justices nominated by the opposition-controlled parliament. And we kind of see this in the United States as well. The Supreme Court really doesn't come into play until it's time to put people in the Supreme Court. And they try to fill those slots with, like in the United States, they try to fill them with liberal Supreme Court justices. The conservatives want a more conservative Supreme Court justice because that has a huge impact on the laws and the interpretation of laws and so on and so forth. It is really a huge deal. And so as it is here, President Han, or the acting President Han, he doesn't want to appoint any justices that were nominated by the opposing party because it would kind of put the swing in their favor, so to say. To confirm Yoon's removal from office, the top court requires a consent of 6 of the 9 justices, but only 6 are currently serving, meaning that a unanimous decision is effectively required. So again, whether or not to fill the vacant seats on Justice Bench has thus become the primary point of political strife. So again, this is kind of before all this happened, it's like, it doesn't really matter. We don't need to fill the seats, blah, blah, blah. But now suddenly the pressure is on to fill the seats, and the acting president doesn't want to do it. And so they're talking about impeaching him. And, yeah, it remains unclear whether acting President Han has been officially impeached despite the National Assembly vote. So they voted for him to be impeached. The ruling party, which opposes the opposition-led move, is mounting a legal challenge to question the vote's validity and its implications. If the impeachment is upheld, Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chae Song-mok will step in as the interim leader. But this is the first time this has ever happened in the history of Korea. So yeah, just more fun and games to add fuel to the fire, and I have a feeling it will make Korea's economy, the repercussions of this it'll be bad for the economy, is basically it. And we're already seeing that. The opposition Democratic Party of Korea controls a clear majority of seats, which it says is enough to impeach any cabinet member who is next in line for the acting role of president. So again, it's kind of like in the United States where if political party gets control of the House and the Senate, and it's kind of the same thing of what's going on here. If President Yoon's removal is confirmed by the court, there will be a presidential election within 60 days. Opposition leader Lee Jae-myung is currently leading in polls by a large margin. So all of this is going to be really interesting, and unfortunately, with all of this political stuff going on, what's going to happen is this is going to end up being bad for Korea and Koreans, everyday working Koreans, and people like me who live here. Well, it can, but it's kind of a benefit, and we'll talk about that. Looking at the Korean won, will it stop depreciating against the US dollar? Now, this is huge because I've talked about exchange rates and how, you can make money if you have US dollars because you're getting more Korean won. But since this impeachment of the acting president, the impeachment of the first president, Yoon, and now of Han, now we're really getting on shaky ground, and the won rate is just crazy. So we're going to take a look at a little bit of this. Let's make this a little bit bigger. Okay, this is interesting. Is the Korean won has weakened to levels not seen in 15 years, driven by concerns over prolonged domestic political instability. Because of the whole martial law debacle. During Friday's trading session, the value of Korean's currency against US dollars soared to 1481 for the first time since 2009. It reached 1488 during the financial crisis back in 2009, which was crazy. The won opened up at 1467.5 against the dollar, up 2.7, and closed at 1467.5. In addition to domestic political uncertainties, the U.S. Federal Reserve's potential adjustment to pace the interest rate cuts is fueling the strength of the dollar as well. This has placed the Korean currency in a challenging position both domestically and internationally. Like I said, and all of this leading to speculation the exchange rate could rise to the 1,500 won rate next year, which is days away. The first half of the year, the exchange rate is likely to rise further due to U.S. exceptionalism and escalation of trade disputes during Trump's second term. So again, Trump is more America first, and there's a lot of Koreans that are mad at him, but then it's like he's doing what's good for Americans. It's kind of like, well, if Korea does things that are good for Koreans and other countries get mad, I mean, you're going to do what's right for your country. So, it is what it is. But the problem, I don't think, stems so much from that. I think the fact that the martial law was declared was the straw that broke the camel's back, and this all just culminates into a perfect storm. And unfortunately, Korea's economy is going to take a huge hit, which is going to be bad for a lot of Koreans. If you have American dollars, it's going to be really good. The trajectory of next year's exchange rate will depend on the starting point of the rate just before Trump's inauguration. If the exchange rate fails to stabilize, it may be necessary to consider possibility of it reaching 1,500 won next year. This is going to be really interesting because I think we'll see 1,500. I think it'll go past 1,500. For how long, I'm not sure. But the fact that the next administration in the United States wants to take a pro-United States stance and to protect their interests, and then throw in all of this political instability here in Korea with the president's impeachment, the prime minister's impeachment, their whole Supreme Court justices, and how that's going. This is, and then the fallout from all of this in the martial law is really going to be compounded. So each thing that happened adds to the synergy of chaos, I guess you could call it, because it affects tourism, business, imports, exports. We're talking about huge loans. We're talking about banking, banking between countries and credit ratings. When in a previous video we talked about, and I showed you an article where it was talking about that there's a possibility that the Korea's credit rating could go down. And so it's like, oh, and then all of a sudden the president gets impeached, martial law is over, the whole 9 yards, or martial law is declared gone. And then they impeach the president, and that kind of stabilized things a little bit. But now that this has come up with the impeachment of the prime minister, acting President Han, this could go bad. And I don't think it will have anything to do with the United States, but I think with all of this political turmoil going on here in Korea, we'll see higher exchange rates. And again, that's going to be bad for the Korean people, but it'll be great for people like us who are American citizens or foreigners who live in Korea, work in Korea, who their currency is stronger than the Korean won. So we might end up seeing a little bit of inflation here in Korea on top of the inflation that the rest of the world is already experiencing. And yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's just crazy stuff. Despite the trend of net selling by foreign investors, there has been net buyers in sectors such as internet and gaming and blah, blah, blah. Among the top sectors with the 10 strongest net buying by foreign investors, 8 have maintained or seen upward adjustments in profitability expectations this month, despite domestic uncertainties. And it's kind of interesting because when you get to things like that, when there's blood in the water, it's a good time to go fishing. That's when all the sharks show up and, other fish show up because of the carnage that's there, and everybody wants to get a little piece. So, and then there's also the fact that it's like people will sell at a lower price now and lock in lower prices to kind of hedge themselves against what's going to come in the future. So, and then there's the possibility of, somebody lowballing and saying, well, that price is good, but we're going to lowball you a little bit more because of the instability. And so you have this negotiation going back and forth. And basically every sector, and yeah, it's going to get interesting. With that, as we take a look, currently, let's refresh this page. It's at 1,473 won per US dollar, which is really interesting. So we got that going on. Let's take a look at the chart. And we'll go ahead and view the chart. And that's what we can. This is 1 year. So this is a 1 year. This is a 2 year. This is a 5 year. This is a 10 year, to kind of give you some perspective. And unfortunately, I don't like it when people just show a small segment of a chart and say, "Oh, look at this. This is good or this is bad." But in the big picture, we really need to look at things. So when we look back, let's see, how far does this go back? 2015 all the way back to, it's 2015. So that's 10 years. But you're seeing that, about 1,100, 1,200, 11, drop down to 1,000, about, 1,100 won, and then, it kind of pops up there and goes back down to 1,100, maybe 1,200 about right here since December, around December of 2021. And then what we end up seeing is this increase over time, and then it dips a little bit, but we've gotten more and more and more. And then when we look at the December, You look at the December 1424, and then it just keeps going up. And so if we look at like within the last month, we've seen this steady increase with some spikes on all of this. And yeah, 1480. And while this is interesting for people that have boots on the ground in Korea and foreigners who live in Korea, and you get paid in US dollars or your pension is in US dollars, whatever it is, this exchange rate is good. But when you go to a currency exchange store, you can generally get a little bit higher than the quoted rates, okay, because they're all jockeying for position and trying to make a little money. So they'll offer a little bit of an extra exchange than what you see here. It is what it is. So really, we're going to be making some more money in regards to the Korean won. And I fully expect to see this go to 1,500 and above, which is really good for, again, people with American dollars. But for people that get paid in Korean won, it's going to be a little rough when you throw in the inflation, throw in some further instability of their political uproar and, fighting back and forth. And if they don't get their collective shit together, yeah, it could end up being worse. And the thing is, it's like you think Korea would be treading lightly, but they're not, because the two political sides are at each other's throats, and they're not, in my opinion, I don't think they're taking into consideration the Korean people as a whole, and those are the people that are going to be suffering. So they're doing these things, and the politicians are doing the politician stuff, and really the people that are being hurt are going to be the Korean people, the everyday working people. So yeah, that's that, and kind of similar to what we see in the United States. It's just the people always take the brunt of it. But I think with the actions that we've seen so far, they impeached President Yoon, or at least got the votes to impeach him. There's still that process. That will be interesting, and that kind of stabilized some things. But now that we have more uproar, and I think that shows that there's still more political infighting that's going to rear its ugly head, and that will have a negative effect on what is going on. So, I get it. Each political party wants their side to be king, and as with any government that has a two-party system. But when you do that and you fight in spite of what is good for your country as a whole, that's where the problems come in. And that's why I think the Korean won is going to go up, the exchange rate is going to go up to 1,500 or higher. So yeah, this is going to be really interesting. If we take a look at the 1 week, just 1 week, 1446. And then, 1485, and, now it's around 1473, whatever. I think it'll kind of level out, and depending on what goes on, it'll go up a little bit. And again, then you throw in the interest rates of the Federal Reserve, and that will solidify the US dollar against the Korean won, or the Korean won will be weakened because of that. That will compound it into hitting that 1,500 won mark, which, like I said, is good. So there are a number of people who have contacted me that are interested in coming to Korea and doing the same thing, retiring. They have a Korean spouse, and so they get the F1 and the F4 visa, and they want to buy an apartment or buy a house. This will be a good time, especially probably after January or January and afterwards of next year, because the won rate will be even more. And there is this thing in Korea where Koreans are... how should I put this? A lot of Koreans they're real estate rich, but they're money poor. So in other words, there's a lot of people that have properties, but they're mortgaged. And so they rent these properties out, and yeah, you have the property, it's not paid off, but you still have the property. You know what I mean? But I think in what we saw in the inflation and other stuff that is going on, and kind of a little bit of a housing dip here in Korea, is that people have overextended themselves with mortgage and real estate loans. And especially if you have an adjustable rate mortgage, then it ends up people found themselves, and then with the inflation and prices and stuff going up, and they're not getting an equivalent raise in their income, it kind of stagnates the real estate, and now they can't afford to pay for the real estate, so people are letting go of properties, or they're taking loans or taking out the equity in the property, and then they come to a place of where it's like, they think eventually real estate will always go up, and so it's okay to take the equity out of a loan or out of a property and use it because eventually down the road, property's always going to go up. We saw that in the United States, and that ended horribly with the housing crash. I don't think Korea will go through a housing crash like we did with the subprime loans and the mortgage debacle that we had in the United States, where if you breathe, you qualified for a loan. That was just amazing. Low income loans to people, and we're seeing this in the United States again, where immigrants, California is saying, hey, immigrants, whether you're illegal immigrants or non-documented immigrants, or however they want to, swing that, is now they're offering them loans. And if you're not qualified for a loan, but now you are, that's part of the reason that the whole housing debacle and subprime mortgage loan real estate crash happened, is because they gave loans to risky people, and it blew up, and then everybody made money, and then it blew up. The bubble blew up. Will we see that here in Korea? No, I don't think so, because they're a little bit smarter than that. But I do think that we're going to see a correction in real estate. We've seen it. And matter of fact, taking a look at real estate, let me bring up let's go ahead and take a look at this. We'll go ahead and we'll take a look at the real estate. And let me see, where are we? Yep, we're down here. Okay. And no, that's not where we are. There we are. Okay. So, for example, this is Brownstone Apartments, and there's 170 properties that are up for sale. And this is where we got our apartment, is Brownstone. Now there's a lot of Brownstone complexes. There's some in Seoul, there's some in other places. So don't think that there's only one Brownstone. It's kind of like a chain, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, it ends up there's like 170 different properties for sale. And when you start looking at these different properties, and they're more expensive now, at least here. Now, the context is this is close to U.S. military base. There's a lot of contractors, a lot of military service personnel that are assigned and live off post, so the government's paying their housing, so there's a set fee for stuff like that. But overall, we've seen an increase in the prices of properties. That's going to be offset a little bit with the exchange rate. But I can tell you right now, the prices for some properties here, like that's a 3-bedroom, so we're looking at 295 million won. And let's take a look at, let's go ahead and move this up here. 295 million. We'll divide that by 1440-ish, and ends up $204,000. So the exchange rate really helps out, but the prices that we've seen is the prices of these properties have gone up. So I think this is part of the knee-jerk reactions. Let me see if I can find a 4-bedroom. That's a 110. So these are all 3-bedroom. 110, 185. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's not ours. 144. That's about what we got. So you're looking at 380 million won there, which is 380 million. And divide that by 1440. We'll just call it that. 265,000. So some of these prices have gone up. Now the price of ours, we got a screaming deal because somebody was in that position to where they needed cash. They couldn't hold on to the property, and they had some financial. So in other words, they were selling at a loss. And so we had a real motivated seller. But overall, from what I've seen, is that these prices have gone up, at least in this complex. Now, little caveat is that if you go to cities that are not sold, that are not close to U.S. military bases, I mean, Camp Humphreys is a military base that's close by, that is the largest United States overseas military base in the entire world. So the real estate is going to be a little bit more inflated than in other cities. But if you go to other cities that don't have, that are good-sized cities that don't have military bases there, U.S. military bases, you'll notice that the prices of apartments and properties are generally lower. But even some of those have gone up in price as people are trying to unload, and but I think we'll see this uptick in the price of properties, and then as the exchange rate continues to go up into the 1,500 won mark, and then we'll have some after effects of the impeachment, and then the other impeachment and the court proceedings, and if anything else screwy happens, could be another Fed interest rate change, all of those things combining, and then the war in Afghanistan, Lord knows what's going to go on with that. But depending on what goes on, we could be seeing another housing dip in the Korean market. I've been reading up on some, local people that are, professionals and so on and so forth, and they're saying the same things. Of course, there's always people saying, it's going to stay steady. Other people say it's going to go down. I think it's going to go down a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. So yeah, the prices have gone up a little bit. But again, if you buy from a motivated buyer or a motivated seller, you can get a good deal in any market. It just depends on who you find. So that is, let me see if I can bring this into, so this is where Camp Humphreys is at. That's where this big space here is Camp Humphreys, and then Brownstone is right over here. So we're really, really close to Camp Humphreys. Another place to buy properties, I know I'm getting off topic, is going to be in Asan. If we can see, there it is. No. I think that's it right there. Yep. So here's another one, Asan, which is Asan Technical Valley. It's generally a newer city, and these are the apartments of EG the One or Easy the One, depending on how it's translated. Their newest building over here, because somebody's asking about this. Let's see if we can find one. Second floor. Lower floors are always going to be less expensive than properties on the higher floors. But we can see that this one is 325 million won, which isn't too bad. If we take a look at some pictures, I know some people were asking about this, and I'm using Chrome because it has a translation plugin that you can use. But yeah, there's a little 3-bedroom, the master bedroom, the master closet, master bath, and then you have your living room, another bedroom. This would be the entryway here, and a little full bathroom with tub, little pantry closet there, another bedroom. I'm not sure what that is. The kitchen, and then a pantry area and stuff like that. But for some people that are asking, well, what do these properties look like? It's kind of normal here in Korea, but it's a little different than the United States. That thing there is an air conditioner, but that looks like a pretty nice place. And just kind of, it is what it is. The majority of people live in apartments, so that's kind of different there. Huge walk-in closet. That's actually kind of like that layout. But some of them come with washer and dryer, some of them don't. But generally on the newer apartment buildings, like this one is that apartment building for number 9 complex. So when we zoom in here, you can see that number 9 complex consists of all of these apartments, 901, 902, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 911, 912. All of those are newer apartments. And of course, the higher the number, the newer it is, which usually means that the higher the price. So when you take a look at this, and I've had people ask me, well, where should I live? I don't know where you should live, But generally, I'm just putting this out there, is that if you pick an apartment building that is brand spanking new, you're going to pay a lot of money. But if you buy an apartment in a building or a complex that is 5, 6, 7 years old, you're going to get the same layout. You're going to get the exact same floor plan, but it'll be cheaper. So it could be $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 cheaper, $40,000 cheaper, and if you find a motivated seller, you could get a pretty good deal. So, for example, if we go over here and we take a look at, let's just pick this one here and see what this one is. So this one is, come on, there we go. This is the 5th complex. And we start looking at the prices. You see 230 million, 210, 230, 210, 210, 220, 250. Again, we take a look at same floor plan, exact same floor plan, but a lot less. So, I can't tell you where to live, but just like with any other real estate, when you buy something that's brand new, you're going to pay a lot of money. Where as opposed to buying something that is 5, 6, 7 years old, you're going to pay less, but you'll get the same floor plan. So, it is what it is. And that's, you look at this, and we will see it's the exact same floor plan. This one's a little bit different. This comparable, but again, the same type of style, same type of layout, and they do go by sizes. That's a pretty good size one. But again, with an older building, you're going to be paying less money than with a brand new place. But the thing is that really, is the difference that important, that 5 or 6 years worth an extra $20,000, $30,000 or $40,000? I don't know. For me, it's not. But I think what we'll end up seeing is a little dip in the housing market here in Korea, and that will open up some opportunities for people and what's going on. With that, this is kind of interesting because it comes up because the Resident Registration Act, South Korean citizens will be issued with mobile identification cards. So in other words, I've got my own Korean registration card. So it's kind of like called an ARC card, alien registration card. It used to be called that until somebody said the word alien has a negative connotation. So now it's a Korean registration card. And now you're going to have that identification on your phone, and that's going to start yesterday. Starting 27 December, this is the first time that a digital resident ID cards have been issued in Korea. Citizens can either visit a local civic center or city office where they can activate their mobile ID by scanning a one-time QR code or tap a physical IC chip-enabled card on their smartphone. Issuance fee is free. Mobile ID users the latest security technologies, encryption to prevent counterfeiting, falsification, fraudulent use, can only be issued to a single mobile phone device and can be reissued if the cell phone is replaced or expires after a period of 3 years. In the event that the phone is reported lost, the mobile ID will cease to be valid. So, and then they have some other news. But this is kind of interesting here, is to have that mobile identification card. So that's kind of cool. And the reason I say that's kind of cool is because it comes to a place where here in Korea there's a lot of cyber crime. There's a lot of phishing scams going around. I constantly get text messages of saying, hey, in some official sounding vernacular, of, hey, your bank, this is your bank, and, we have this money that you need to claim. All you need to do is click this link, and if you click the link, they take over your phone. If they take over your phone, it's a done deal. They'll run up charges and so on and so forth. So while in the United States, everybody has a cell phone, and you can do online shopping and Amazon and banking, and it's fairly easy. Here in Korea, there's a lot more steps, and everything is tied to your identity, which is tied to your phone, or maybe I should put it as your phone is tied to your identity. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's a multi-layered system here in Korea when we're talking about your identity here in Korea and how it's linked to your phone and linked to your bank and so on and so forth. Uh, this is another step to combat against phishing scams and people stealing phones and opening up accounts and just doing all types of nefarious things, to steal money from you. So this is going to be kind of a good thing. I know in the United States there's going to be people that are like, oh no, the mark of the beast and blah blah blah. And it's like, yeah, whatever. Um, it's really kind of interesting, and I'm definitely going to be looking into this and seeing how this goes and whether this is something that's going to catch on, which it already has because of all the cybercrime that goes on. So I fully expect this mobile ID. It's voluntary now, but eventually it's going to come to a place of where more and more businesses and apps and so on and so forth are going to rely on this for verification, for online shopping, online banking, and so on and so forth. So eventually I think everybody's going to have to do this at one point or another. I feel sorry for seniors. Not me, senior, but I mean really, really old seniors. I can't believe I'm a senior. But for really, really old seniors who are not technologically savvy, and they have problems using cell phones and kiosks and things like that, booking rides on trains on their phone. uh, there's a big problem with the elderly that haven't caught up with the times when it comes to technology. I think that's going to be a big thing that we're going to see as well. But yeah, this is eventually going to, I think this is going to come, and it's something that everybody's going to have to do, so you might as well get it done and over with early. But yeah, that's what we got going on. So anyway, that's the news that we have for being here, retired in Korea, and some of the information, another impeachment of the acting president, because if the first president was impeached, and the Supreme Court justice debacle, and then the fallout from the instability of all this stuff that's going on is going to lead to a worse exchange rate, which we've seen, and I fully expect to see 1,500 won to the dollar. Little recap, it's going to be bad for Koreans, good for people with United States dollars. So people that are moving here and planning to retire and purchase property, it'll be good if you have US dollars. And yeah, foreigners can buy property. Just to give you a little thing, people tried to argue with me saying that foreigners couldn't buy property in Korea. And I'm like, my apartment, the apartment that I am in here in Korea is in my name. And, it's interesting because I actually had people who have lived in Korea for a number of years telling me that foreigners can't buy property. And it's like, then how did I buy my apartment? My wife's name is nowhere on the legal document that I bought this property. Nothing, zip zero. So yeah, you can't tell me that. And, especially if you get with an experienced realtor, you will find out that foreigners can buy property in Korea. You can. You don't even have to be in Korea to buy property. And I've had people tell me, no, you can't do that. And yet I've had realtors say, yeah, we have people from China and Japan and other countries that are buying property here in Korea. A lot of Chinese down in Jeju-do are buying up properties because, it's an island, little, vacation spot, all that stuff. A lot of Chinese are buying properties, rich Chinese are buying properties in Korea. And these people never even show up, don't even step foot into Korea. They buy it all online. You don't have to be a resident. I've had some people tell me and say, oh, well, you have to be a legal resident. You have to have a visa to buy a property. No, you don't. No, you don't. You can buy it on a tourist visa. And again, you don't even have to be in Korea to buy property. I could technically and literally be in the United States, look at Naver Real Estate, contact a realtor and say, hey, I want to buy a property. Are you experienced in, selling to foreigners? And if they say yes, I can do everything online. Transfer the funds, do the whole property. I'll have to jump through some bells and whistles and get some stuff notarized or apostilled. But I don't have to set foot in Korea. I could buy everything sight unseen, being not physically there to see everything. But I could look at all the pictures and say, yeah, that's the property I want, and I'm going to buy it. And I don't have to even have a visa or even be in Korea. So yeah, it's really interesting. You get a number of people, and unfortunately, there's even people who are Americans who are retired here, same as me, have a Korean spouse, and they're spouting this BS saying, "Oh, you can't buy property," and it's like, I don't know what rock you crawled under, but a lot of things have changed, and yeah. I've had people tell me that foreigners can't get bank accounts in Korea, and it's like I've got a foreign bank account, and what do you mean you can't get it? It's I've had other people tell me no, you can't get foreign cell service. You just need to get roaming service from the United States. It's like no, you can get a phone in Korea. You can get service, and if you have a visa and long-term visa like we do, either work or vacation visa or especially long-term residency visa like we have, yeah, you can get Korean cell phone service. It's just people just, I don't know, they hear something and then they just latch onto it and then they just bleh, they vomit it up whenever they hear without verifying anything. Yeah, and it's just kind of weird. It's weird. So yeah, a lot of misinformation happens, even amongst people who live in Korea and have retired in Korea themselves. It's matter of fact, I ran into one guy, him and his Korean wife, and I'm not going to say his name or anything or identify him or them in any way, shape, or form. But he kept the information, and basically he told his Korean wife, who wanted to come and retire in Korea, they were visiting now, that they wouldn't be able to stay because Korea doesn't offer it. It's like, oh yeah, they do. Yeah, your wife is Korean. She has Korean ancestry, and it ends up she's a Korean national. She didn't even change her citizen to U.S. citizenship, but it doesn't really matter. If you have Korean ancestry, you can get a visa, and then he would be able to get a visa, an F1 and F4, and it ended up that basically he just didn't want to. He didn't like Korea, so he didn't want to tell his wife about how easy it was to, yeah, get that visa and stay in Korea. Yeah, I have problems with that. If you don't want to live somewhere because you don't like it, you should still be open about with your spouse about everything that's going on. Instead of hiding that information and trying to not let that information come out. And unfortunately, this guy's wife was there. I said, "Oh no, it's really easy. It just took 2.5 months, and you can get your visa approved, and boom, you're good to go." And he's like, "Well, but then there's the thing with the banking and the bugga 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 bugga." He's doing all this stuff, and it's like clearly he did not want to be in Korea, and so thus he was lying and keeping information from his wife, which was really that's problematic. That's a problem marriage right there. But for whatever the reason, there's a lot of misinformation about what goes on here in Korea and staying and buying property and so on and so forth. So that gets really interesting. So that's a little bit of gossip that we got going on. But other than that, people have asked me and said, well, with the martial law, with the impeachments, how's it been going? Are you okay? If you need a place to stay, you can come. We've got a guest house or whatever. And I appreciate that. I really do. Because that's like, I've had a number of people say, hey, we heard the martial law. If you need a place, boom, you got it, brother. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. Somebody I've never even met in real life has opened up their home to say that if I run into trouble, I have a place to stay. That's just amazing to me. But I have to tell them, it's like, yeah, no, we're good. When they did the martial law, where we live, which is south of Seoul by an hour and a half, 2 hours or whatever, we didn't, it's not like there's tanks running down the streets or anything like that, or soldiers, stay inside, it wasn't that type of martial law thing. Up in Seoul, it was around the National Assembly area, but for the majority of the country, you wouldn't know. If there was no social media, you wouldn't know that martial law was declared. Yeah, it's just the way it is. We still go shopping, stores still open, banks still open, the whole 9 yards. With that, there were a lot of people who took money out of banks in ATMs and so on and so forth. And ATMs ran out of money really quick because of the martial law thing. So that kind of, again, when you say martial law, it never brings to mind any positive say, oh, great, you know, yeah, that never crosses your mind. So there were runs on ATMs and things like that, but not around here. So everything went as normal, you know. So it's not as bad as what everybody thinks, but it's still problematic. And as we saw, the exchange rate is just really, really bad, and it's going to get worse, I think, unfortunately. So yeah, that's what we got going on. Anything else we got going on? No, not really. Just more of the same. You know, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the impeachment trials and the stability of Korea, and that will have a big factor on exchange and everything else. But I do expect housing to go down because as this protracts and goes longer and longer, people are going to see that they can't hold on to the properties because of interest rates and so on and so forth, and they need money. You know, they're not cash rich, they're property rich, so they'll sell off properties to get the cash, which will present some opportunities for people who can buy with cash, just like in any other real estate market in the world. So, with that being said, that's it. Enough rambling. Would you consider retiring overseas? And what do you think about all of this stuff with the Korean impeachment and the exchange rate? Good, bad, indifferent? Do you have a different point of view? Put that in the comment section down below. I'd like to read that as well. So we will see you on the next video. Peace. Yeah. Oh yeah, if you want to buy me a coffee, there's a link in the description box. Appreciate it.